Hi, I'm Prerna Reddy. I'm the program manager here at the Queens Museum, and I'm very honored that Open Engagement has chosen us to be the host this year. I think I'm just going to open the floor to Carrie Lynn Reeves, who's been the lifeblood of making this work, and to introduce Morgan. So,
thanks, Prerna. So J. Morgan Puett is a transdisciplinary creative producer of many emergent complexities, as we will soon see in her presentation. Much of this rich complexity comes out of her rich background. She was born in Hayhira, Georgia in 1957. She received her MFA in sculpture and experimental filmmaking from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 1985. After grad school, she forged new territory by intervening into the fashion system with a series of storefront installations and clothing dwelling projects in Manhattan in the 80s and the 90s. She went on to produce a long series of research installations on the histories of the needle trade systems in museums around the world. During this period, she relocated full-time to upstate New York and rural Pennsylvania, engaging and transforming a new place. Along with Mark Dion, she turned a 94-acre rural space into the place of Mildred Slain. Her work has been innovative in the realm of social engagement, and the Mildred Slain project continues to forge new ground, citing that being is profoundly a social and a political practice. This tie between life and work is tested, questioned, affirmed, and celebrated simultaneously by the contemporary art-life complex of Mildred Slain and the Mildred Complexity, one of Morgan's ongoing life art projects. And I can legitimately attest to that statement. I discovered Mildred Slain myself, first as a fellow 2 summers ago, then as a staff member for 2 seasons in the role of the Officer of the Complexity, and now as part of the interdisciplinary team. And into the future, always as a friend. I know that much of that last statement was likely somewhat puzzling. Officers, complexities, interstitiaries, and you might be left wondering, what exactly is Mildred Slain? In many ways, that is the strength of Morgan's work. It, much like recent political movements such as the Occupy movement, refuses to be one thing over another. It refuses to be pinned down, to be too quickly read, to be finite or definite. Hence why each summer I, along with many other friends of Mildred Slain, have made the pilgrimage out to Beach Lake, Pennsylvania, to try to better explore and understand the many questions of life work that Morgan is looking at. Morgan embodies and puts theory into practice. She creates, contradicts, and complexifies systems both for life and work. Without further ado, it is with great pleasure I introduce to you J. Morgan Puett.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Prerna. Thank you, Kale. We call her Kale at Mildred Slain. Well, that's a big light there. And thank you, Jen Delos Reyes. I mean, everybody please give Open Engagement a big hand. This has been so exciting having everybody here. I'm so honored to be up here. A little scared because I have some really harsh critics and some deep friendships in that audience, and I just want y'all to be gentle. I only have a little bit of a time. I know it seems like a lot, but it's going to go into a question-answer period. So I'm going to do a trajectory, try to condense some central themes throughout this presentation and move in and out a little bit when I get nervous to break it up. And I do want the friends of Mildred Slain, people who have been there, just please stand up right now. I just want to see who's out there right now. All of you who've been there, who know it, okay. So other people look around, because you can ask them questions, and I would love for you to think about, through the talk, some points that I've missed on, and some maybe testimonials of your experience there, because the most important thing about it, it's about people. It's about all the people that come through it. It's not about me. I happen to be just kind of a mediator in this thing, and the generator, but she already gave you my background. All I wanted to add to that is that being tied to the materially and conceptual field of installation art has been a part of my entire life. I was brought up by artists, a writer, a painter, there were musicians. Everything about my childhood generates a quality of life that I attempt to scratch, to achieve at Mildred Slain. And I think that's what's so special, is because when people come there, it's like you remember that kind of collaboration you had as a child. Well, you can never have that now that we're so educated and we all have MFAs and PhDs and blah. But there's something really innocent that we keep trying to reach back to. I know that's really something I should never have said because I'm going to get beat up for it later. But anyway, I mean, even when I was like 8 years old, digging a hole in the backyard and lining it with aluminum foil and filling that with water just so I could have my own swimming pool and smoke a piece of grass, you know? I mean, real grass, not that grass. But anyway, let me get this thing started because it's Mildred Slain I'm here to talk about. I talked about my childhood intimately on Thursday. Hang on. Okay. Is that going? Apologize for the projection. I think as it gets darker, hopefully, this light could be subdued a little bit if that's possible, but can you see it? Okay. I'm going to say the big thing, and I'm going to say it over and over again. Mildred Slain is a working, living research environment that engages and fosters every aspect of life. Okay, it's an experiment in living, and it's developed a rigorous form, a pedagogical strategy, and the entire site has become a living museum. In some ways, it's really not a museum at all. But now that we're developing, all of our friends and colleagues that are coming there have actually grown up there a little bit, many of them, and now have careers or in museums and scattered all around the world, and they still convene there every year. So rather, I like to call it's like a new contemporary art complexity. It's a 94-acre site smattered across this landscape that's partially wooded with a beautiful indigenous forest, and then there's a little section of it that has these 19th century outbuildings. And the whole site was really inspired by this remarkable woman, Mildred Stephens, who lived most of her life there from 1902 until 1987 when she died. She was shacked up with that guy, Vincent Miller. And ironically, they called the farm the Old Miller Farm in the 20th century, of course, because it was such a male world then. But we reclaimed Mildred and all of her stories and all of the neighbors' stories about her life there. She didn't drive, she walked in and out of the lane. And this house that you're looking at, that we now called the Mildred House, or the Mildreds Historical Society and Museum, kind of is a repository of everything that's going on there. And it's an ongoing structure and sculpture itself that kind of houses the true heart of the site. But it was Mildred's house. 12 people lived in there. All those people lived in there. She ended up living there alone from probably around the 50s, maybe 40s and onward. We had architectural conservationists come who's worked with us in advising us how to preserve the house. So it's really a central sculpture of sorts to the lane. And we have this ongoing project called Mildred's Archaeology that Mark Dion, my friend and partner in Mildred's Lane, has been slowly moving forward. Now, the body of people, I mean, it's a collaboration between Mark Dion, myself, our son Gray Rabbit, our friends and colleagues all over the world, many of them who you'll see in this slideshow, but not enough of them that I can honor and thank, who've helped us build out this place, who've come and convened and have shared their ideas in this unusual exchange in creative domesticity. of this project is this kind of school. It's a school where we're trying to evolve new and emergent curriculums. One is that for students, research-based project art practices are best and profoundly understood in a real site, on site. And two, education should be principally involved with the development of new modes of life, domesticating. This unique program is not like other studio residencies at all. The entire site is the studio. Any given space is a studio. The land, the life itself is the studio at Mildred Slain. And it's emergent. There's no predetermining what's going to happen there, and that's the really unique thing. It's as good as the people who come to it. It's as strong as the unit of friends and colleagues that have come to it and developed ideas there and are continuing to do projects there. And these are projects that are starting way back in the 90s and still are conversations, discursive units on their own. They're still developing. We're just now trying to finish a couple of projects that literally have been going on for over a decade. So it's this real slowing down of creative practice. It's not like, there's a show at the end. Although, there always is there? Okay. To engage with every aspect of life. That's the thing. I call myself an ambassador of entanglement. And that's not just to be funny. I mean, it's literally, you can't call yourself an artist and doing what I try to do there, a director, a curator, a janitor, a housekeeper, I'm mowing the lawn, taking out the compost. I mean, it's an enormous task having a piece of land. And this is a little piece of land, 94 acres, about 100 miles northeast of here on the Pennsylvania border of New York, right at a little place called Narrowsburg. And it is deep in the woods. To get there is a little bit difficult, even though we have these public events and social Saturdays and such things. It's really difficult to sort of follow the trail through the website, get to the reservation, make an appointment, come to our events. But once you get there, you kind of get it. There's no way of describing how it is there. And I really reach out to my friends and colleagues who can help me out after I finish talking and blurbing around here. But an ambassador of entanglement affords me to sort of expand my role so that I'm not just stuck being an administrator for this thing, because I want to participate. And it is my home. It's where I'm raising a child. So it's kind of affords this latitude where everybody can share. We also have these other crazy titles like Supervisor of Entanglement, Officer of Complexity, Digestion Choreographer. You'll see a lot of those people in this slideshow. Ministry of Comfort is the most important role there, because it's all about a mode of conviviality, hospitality, and sort of slowing down enough to make sure that we're creating a practice there that's comfortable, beautiful, sustainable, political, social. So it's about being. That's why I say being is the practice. It's based on experimental ways of living together. These collaborations are designed to be shared experiences that may have transformative lifelong effects on how we think of ourselves as creative practitioners in the social sphere. The quotidian is always a launching point there. We kind of inherited this 19th century site as it is, and we've been slowly trying to preserve and build out the vernacular architecture. It was very early on when Mark and I got this place with friends where we decided we wanted to collect vernacular architecture, but it was something that we were already doing in our own practices, and so anytime we would make a project in the 90s, we would sort of try to think of it as a building that we could move back to Mildred Slain. And that was wonderful because then we could sort of adaptively reuse everything. And everything there is kind of in this mode of reusing what was previously used in my practices, these experimental storefront experiments in Manhattan. All of those elements of those interiors came to be a part of the buildings at Mildred's Lane. Some of Mark's projects, those buildings got readapted. Some of my projects got readapted so that you could actually live there and stay there with us and create these environments with us. There's nothing static. There's not a sculpture park in any sense of the word. So there's no way to call this an art park or a museum. That's why I say it's a new contemporary art complexity, because there's no terms for it yet. We're kind of having to build the terms, like the Ministry of Comfort. It's about a living experience. So it gets activated by people coming there. We're doing all sorts of projects, about probably 4 dozen at any given time. Like this pond project, we've been collaborating with University of Pennsylvania, several artists, David Brooks, Natalie German-Jenko, Mark Thoman, landscape architect. We've been using Northroom survey. We did an actual 19th century style survey and created this entire mapping of the site that is used as a base. And so algorithmically, we've derived a pond design that's emerging out of the landscape. We use algorithms often. Algorithms are kind of a really social and democratic way of doing things collaboratively, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, and if I don't, ask me about that. Building projects. We teach fellows and students how to build. So the structure is that we have several institutions that have very early on supported us, because we've grown up to a place where all of our peers are working in these schools and in these positions where they understand, they've been to Mildred's Lane, and so our colleagues kind of slowly collaborated with us to build a way to send fellows to the summer programs and, center around any given topic that our colleagues and friends are interested in. So people might just suddenly come up with the idea, like, I'm going to do a topic on this and that next summer, and it's very emergent. It's a self-organizing system. It's not like I'm curating or Mark's curating. It's like we're co-curating with our friends. It's not just black and white. And it's constantly changing, and I hope it forever changes. This is an example of that such stuff. This is in collaboration with the Museum School of Boston and Tufts Atwood Art Center in Boston, where we literally took on the subject of Walden and the Transcendentalists and worked with fellows that were sent from the museum school in a topic around town and country, and moved in and created this installation with the students and with different colleagues. And we are creating 2 house kits. One is a Walden, based on the Walden House at Walden Pond, the row house at Walden Pond. It's called Renovating Walden House Kit number 1. And this fall we're doing an adjunct program. Schools can sign on as an adjunct class and send students to Mildred's Lane Renovating Walden House Kit number 2. And that's going to be also algorithmically derived. And these are some of from the brochure and the catalog from that. Now, we're touching on all sorts of subjects in every aspect of life. Again, we're foraging food, we're studying mycology, we're looking into the biology of the site. We have our own kind of visiting naturalist who frequents the site every couple of months. Peter Warney comes in and interprets what's going on and explains to us, for instance, how turtles see light and water. It's just amazing. So there's always this rich engagement with science, with creative domesticating and with critical artistic practices. And that was just a performance you just saw with Pablo Helguera, who comes every year. Several of our friends come every year and do some spectacular thing, all in the spirit of kind of experimenting with their own personal practice and expanding on it, or not. But we did this archiving, living archive at MoMA in 2012 because things were getting ahead of us and we just didn't really have an archive. We had this absolutely huge Quonset hut full of stuff. I almost said junk. It's not junk. Full of important stuff that we actually have to really unfold and unplete and archive. And MoMA afforded us the time to sort of delve in and give a thanks to so many of the practitioners who had come and helped us. And we developed this series of swarmings at MoMA where people came and did little workshops, presentations. They fussed around with their portion of the archive and built it out. And it was an ongoing installation, a living installation, as much as we could sort of reinterpret that in Common Sense's studio exhibition. MoMA Studio Common Senses, it was called. And we were also collaborating with Fritz Haig's rug, which actually the center of it started at Mildred Slain, and that moved all around the world. As creative practitioners, work is our life, right? Work is everything. So we weave our lifestyle through our work. I mean, if we're really devoted to a practice, that's the way we do it. Thus, work styles. I think that's going to go on automatic. I'm just letting this go so I can sort of come in and out of it. Is it going? Thank you. Work styles is a result of any practitioner's kind of thinking, doing, researching, just the way they go through their practice. Work styles is the way you personally, aesthetically, intuitively integrate your life into it. And we're very rigorous about this at Mildred Slain. We try to practice a way to make that more important and sustainable. It's about caring for oneself. It's kind of building in kind of this feminism around creative domesticating that's a rigor. And sometimes that's easy to do. Some people just get it quite naturally, but other people it's really about breaking habits because it's about rethinking every mode: sleeping, doing, reading, working, thinking, playing, every mode of life. It's like, and we do it in an iterative process. So if we're setting the table and there's someone new to the site, and I mean, we look at it as a group and we go just like, that's not good enough. And we do it again until we get it so that it's a spectacular event, an engagement with things, objects, human and non-human. It's very important at Mildred Slain that you deal with the collections as real elements, as a part of the site. Again, excuse me, we're using algorithms, excuse me. Algorithms are for me, a way you can quickly collaborate with a body of people and objects. You can sort of break down the elements of a thing into numbers, into letters, into scales, and it's completely a social order. It's just suddenly a very mechanical, easy, straightforward way to allow everyone to author whatever the topic is, whatever the event is. It's so socially democratic and sound. It's playful, it's whimsical, it's funny, it's a surprise, and the whole subject is about not predetermining the outcome. There's no one person who's going to say, what's that going to look like at the end of the day? I'm certainly not. I know it may seem so, but my heavy hand is just that I'm always pushing it forward, trying to make it into something new, something really exciting, so that we can all participate in that experience. Because when you predetermine an idea, it's kind of like the fun is gone already. You want it to be a surprise, and the algorithm really does that. So we use the algorithm often, especially in dinners. And some of these are our algorithmic dinner settings that you're seeing. Now, this doesn't always work. Sometimes there are catastrophes. I don't know if anybody was there at the 2010 fundraiser, brown paper package fundraiser. Boy, that dinner, the oven broke, the chef was overwhelmed. She's here, Theen, poor Theen, where are you? That was so awful. We were all trying to fix things and everything was breaking at the last minute. It was a disaster. But it was still wonderful. It still came out wonderful. We had blue lamb. The kitchen laboratory is really important. We think of it as a laboratory. It's completely filled with scientific glassware. And when you come to Mildred Slain, everything in the house is accessible. Every group that comes to the house literally rearranges. They're asked to turn everything in the house into how they need to use it. So it's a toolbox. It's a museum for 1 minute, and then it's an entire toolbox. So everything in the house is accessible to use in what we call the hoosh. The hoosh is quite an important conceptual installation concept and tool. Its etymology comes from a lot of early American Southern slang, but it goes back to Winnie the Pooh, hooshing Eeyore out of the house. There are a lot of other languages that use this term. It's just being revived at Mildred's Lane, but the hoosh is quite important. We even hoosh the refrigerator. These are refrigerator hooshes. So you're asked to be so rigorous about the environment that you don't make a dinner and leave a mess. You actually have to re-hoosh the damn refrigerator. Now think of that. Look at your refrigerators tonight and think of how you can re-hoosh that. We work with our organic farms. Ant Hill Farm is our favorite because one of our dear staff members who grew up at Mildred's Lane, Monique Millison, is the farm-to-table liaison, and she married the local organic farmer, and we're constantly working with them, and they give us the most beautiful food. But we also have other organic farms and slow food movements all around us, and New York shops from our region, so we have every bit of organic food, good food at hand. Okay, I'm moving into the subject of the pedagogy, and I really wanted to pull out this particular topic because I'm at Mildred's Lane dealing with every aspect of life as a feminist and a mother. I mean, more or less I'm a single parent year-round, raising a kid there, Gray Rabbit Puett, and it's been a real challenge being an artist, career artist, you know, running this project, Mildred's Lane, and being a parent. And some of you out there know what I'm talking about. But this project was really close to me because I wanted to apply the tactics of Mildred's Lane's pedagogical strategies to my own child. So I literally ripped him out of the school system, and for a couple of years, any museum who invited me to do something, I put forth this project. Any institution that invited me to write a grant or do a project with them, I put forth this whole schooling project. Whole schooling, not homeschooling. Homeschooling, public schooling, and those predetermined curriculum strategies are what I was resisting. So I took Gray Rabbit out of school, and we literally went on a around-the-world tour and stopping in and doing this nomadic Mildred Slain camp as we went. And it was one of the hardest things I think I've ever done. It was scary, it was disturbing. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. We were posing this question to our friends and colleagues around the world, but also to strangers. And the question was like, what's important for us to learn today? What's important to know in the 21st century? How do we proceed from here pedagogically? I mean, look, I've got this wild animal I'm raising. What kind of data do we put into this person? Of course, he's already being raised up at Mildred Slain, and there's something weird there already. So anyway, I created this sartorius muscle table that I would have each institution create everywhere I went. And that has its own history that I could talk about later if you're interested. And I proceeded to exchange my creative domesticating habits and tactics, recipes and such, with strangers who would pose or bring field trips, lessons, conversations to each given situation. And it was a very interesting and emergent way to navigate the trip and the world. It was really, really challenging. After the end of it, I mean, actually, it was kind of a disaster because Gray Rabbit rebelled. He finally hit that hormonal stage right in the middle of it, and he completely shut down and rebelled and just went into his headphones, went into his computer. He did keep up with the history lessons as were proposed to us in each place, but he really, it was kind of one of my big failures at Mildred Slain. But in the same way, I think that it was such a great experiment, and I hope that he'll reawaken to it later on. He finally chose this past year, he wouldn't even go on this other residency that I had planned in the project. He stayed home with some friends and part of our staff family, and went to a local country school instead, and just does not want to leave. It doesn't want to travel. He doesn't want to go anywhere. So I'm not sure if it troubled him to the extent where he may just close down. Hopefully it's just hormones. But these are some people that were along the journey that gave us some really great history lessons. Well, another point I just want to drive home that's so important and kind of sums up Mildred Slain is that every aspect of life cannot be achieved, doing that creatively cannot be achieved without including or being a part of community. And there are different kinds of community. There's community of our friends, but there's also the community of town. It's taken me, I've lived up in that region for about 25 years. It's taken me that long to gain town trust. So we've basically moved Mildred Slain out of the woods and onto Main Street through a series of discursive think tanks called Retail 21st Century that started back in 2007. And there are many people who are part of those. Hope Ginsberg, Alison Smith, Claire Pentecost, it goes on. I can't list them all here, but you'll see them in here. And what we did was decide at certain point in those series of ongoing iterations of that think tank that we had to move into town. So as soon as I could afford, I rented a studio, and then I rented a little storefront project space. And then I rented another project space on Main Street. So now we have 3 spaces in Narrowsburg. And over the last 4 years, we've literally moved into town, and we now do not only social Saturdays that are open to the public at Mildred's Lane, but we do town Fridays where we always have somebody collaborating with the community on some level. And these are some of the workshops we've done. Hope Ginsberg's felt-making workshop. Just conversations in the storefront with Gavin and Rebecca and Stephanie there. Indigo Dyeing, a town indigo dyeing. That was one of the most successful ones. Everybody came and to this old school bus garage, and we did indigo dyeing. We keep doing and generating these ideas, and now, and also I'm very involved with the town meeting. And if you're really serious about a social practice, this is what I think you must do. You must get involved with your community, not only your colleagues at Open Engagement, but wherever you live. Each one of you who live in New York, you have a neighborhood, you have a town meeting in that neighborhood every month, possibly every 2 weeks. There are committees, there are things, there are issues that start at a town ground level. And I'm really serious. It was like, it wasn't until I started going to those town meetings that I really understood that anatomy of what a community was. That was really an education. And I try to go to every one. I mean, I have to travel like a migrant worker, as we all are, to make a living. But anytime I touch down, I try to go to those committee meetings and those town meetings. And it's rich, and I've gotten to know the supervisors of the town council. They are now collaborating with us at Mildred's Lane. That took a long curve. You can't do that overnight. You know, when an institution has, this is not institutional critique, but when an institution has an exhibition and you want to do something socially engaged and you're like, okay, I want to work with the town, no one's going to trust you. You have to live, work, think, breathe, find out the problems and the pitfalls of your community and get engaged in helping solve those problems, or even better, create new problems. And that's what's the richest thing about our town. And suddenly everybody's got a project. It's not just Mildred's Lane, it's like the school bus garage is now a whole entity that's creating a studio. There's a huge community garden that's active and growing. Everybody on Main Street has got projects. They're opening up a little school camp that was inspired by our kid camps that we were doing at Mildred's Lane. Suddenly, the whole landscape is amazing. And you must come out just to see Narrowsburg, if not Mildred's Lane, because it is a wonderful little town now. And so many people are so revived and rejuvenated. And I'm so proud of that. I feel such a part of that. They're my community. So here, you're seeing part of the people I just want to thank who've really helped Mildred's Lane grow. Because again, it's not just me, it's about people. It's about all of these people that you're going to see in the next few minutes who are completely devoted to continuing creative practices there, continually helping us build projects. Some people coming and working for nothing. Sometimes Mark and I come out of pocket, to support this thing. We work all year round so that we can have this thing happen in the summer. The school and the program at Mildred's Lane generates an income that fortunately keeps us comfortable through the summer. Feeds us deliciously, houses us, pays my family staff who are devoted and loyal practitioners themselves who give up their work and come and help us at Mildred's Lane, and some of them are here. And by the way, I just want you to stand up. Anybody who's been on the staff, Nat right here has been Ministry of Comfort, started as a fellow. Thena back there. Who else has been on our staff here? Mark Dion, Mr. I would love you to come up and join me in question and answer.
Think about it.
Anyway, comportment as commons. Part of the whole thing, I know you've read about the comportment manual. This is an ongoing project. We're building a series of journals that we hope to publish as soon as we get the material. And it's a shared project. It's called Excerpts from the Journal of Excerpts from the User's Guide to Mildred Slain. And there'll be hundreds of people with their hands on this thing. So it's kind of a big feat. But I'm editing with co-editors. One of our editors right here is Thurza Goodeve of one of our first journals. But we will be working on the projects that have been the longest, and we'll go forward and backward at the same time. But one project is Robert Williams' Alchemy that we're doing this year. Also, Pond House, Spring House Pond with Mark Thoman, that we're actually digging a pond on site this year. Salt and Cedar with Leon and Megan O'Connell, Leon Johnson and Megan O'Connell, and also their son Leander. And also Work Styles, the films. We're making all these home movies. I'm calling it a swarming of films that we're doing this year. So I really would like you all to come out, if you can, on the social Saturdays or town Fridays. We've been also petitioning to get a bus to come directly to Narrowsburg. So I think that's really going to happen. Our whole town is on this project so that you can get a bus, stay overnight, camp overnight. We have lots of places for people to book up in. And you have to come and experience it for yourself. I'm going to answer questions, so I know I left a lot out. I don't have a lot of time to sort of pack all this in, and I'm very nervous to sit in front of you right now. But let me show you just real quick before we go to questions. One way, one of our colleagues and friends, Brian Holmes, came to Mildred Slain and how he interpreted it. I'm going to show you a little film clip right here.
Thank you, Jay Walker. Fantastic introduction. Obviously, it's great to be here. It's been a pleasure getting to know the territory here at Mildred's Lane, or beginning to enter into this this system here, thanks to the generosity of really everyone present here tonight and everyone who's constantly keeping this place going. Thanks you for your hospitality. I kind of wanted to begin this talk with this image, which is really an image of Mildred's Lane, of the main house in this area, taken from behind the tree house in the fog. So that what it really focuses in on is this kind of foggy condition between the fog and the open sky, where you really don't even see where you are, where you just kind of feel your basic existential confusion. It seemed like the beginning point of a lot of things, and plus it's a picture that I found on the internet and I liked. So basically, this Mildred's Lane, I'm coming to understand is quite a place. It's a place which has histories, near histories that almost nobody knows, and I started to look into old photograph. It has artistic references. It's the site of many different socialities, constructions, the creation of different kinds of dreams. And it's something that I guess you can only slowly get into. I mean, it's also the site of artistic productions that shake up what's there and make something else possible. And all these things, I kind of looked through all these different images and looked through my own mind of the last, weeks here and thought about all the things that are emerging and coming together in this place, and what is such a place, and how do you, come into such a place? How do you become part of such an event, because it's always an event, and have a party out here on the grass. So this is a question, I think, that is really a question for Claire and I also, because basically we're moving in, Claire bought a house nearby here, as almost everyone knows, in Tyler Hill. Garnet Puett's old house, where Morgan lived for many years also. We're moving in to this territory, to these communities, and wondering how it is that we will become part of the possibilities that are here, the potentials, and how those things will affect us also. And I guess that's maybe the experience of everyone who comes here, because most people who come here come to stay for a while after all, don't they? So I wanted to reflect on all this, and for that I wanted to use some things that I brought from the last place, or one of the last places that I lived, which is France. And it's some ideas. Yes, it's some kind of wild ideas. What you see is something like a conceptual toolkit for experimental therapeutic practices and for transformatory cultural and political practices. It was developed by Félix Guattari of Deleuze and Guattari, right? In a book called Schizoanalytic Cartographies, which is not translated, as a matter of fact. I have a friend in Paris who claimed that she was translating it into French, but she never actually did. Yes, from the original.
So I think I want to just sum it up with saying what my kind of soundbite that you've all heard or read somewhere before is just like, this is why I say being is the practice. Being there. Being is a social and political entanglement that involves and embodies systems of relationships to each other, relationships to the environment, which is so important to us in the fight against hydraulic fracking at Mildred Slain and in our community. Systems of labor, not only there as a domesticating system, but worldwide. Forms of dwelling, how we coexist. Clothing apparatuses, and that's our interstitiaries, which I don't have time to talk about right now. And most important, creatively domesticating. So all of these things, for me, form this ethics of comportment that is embodied in this idea of work styles. And that, for me, is being. Anyway, I want to move into a question and answer period where a lot of other stuff might get unpacked about how we do this. And you can ask also Mark Dion here in the audience and our staff members. And I would love it if some of the participants who are here in the audience would stand up and just give like a testimonial, if you could, just to help kind of define what it is I'm trying to express here. And thank you for patiently wading through all of my flubber-lubbers. I think we do have a mic, so people can ask questions, and there's one right there.
I was hoping to hear more about your use of algorithms and whether you're thinking of that as a metaphor for community or whether you're actually using algorithms for the structure to implement.
I think that the way I started talking about it, I want to say again, is algorithms are just very convenient in the mode of collaboration. I have documents on collaboration that kind of unpack how many different ways you can collaborate with a body of people, a large body of people. And again, it's like trying to find that, seeking that quality of life we had as children and how we collaborated when we didn't have any of these rules in our systems. We didn't have these teachings, but the algorithm is, I mean, just simply in a definition basis, is a set of rules or ingredients to get to some outcome. It's been around since the 13th century. Your computers are built on algorithms. That's how a computer was born. You do algorithms when you check the change in your pocket and figure out what you can do with it. You know, it's everywhere. It's all around you. And in these cases, we invent very crude forms of it to sort of break down whatever set of elements we're doing at. Like, for instance, in the Scramble Scrabble food game, we would take people's names and break them down into letters or numbers, scruffle them up, scramble them up, and then play a game of Scrabble. And that's what those images were doing. You play a game of Scrabble. Each member of the table who's playing for that particular dish has a set of cards, a set of artist names, and they're playing out the words that have come out of those names that express ways of making food or food ingredients or whatever. You can set up your own rules. It's different every time. I mean, we've done it differently. We just made algorithms out of our favorite quotes from philosophers and taken those quotes and turned them into food. But what importantly that you do is you set up your own game system. It's a Fluxus thing. It's been around forever. I mean, it's John Cage. It's all that good stuff, but applying it to domesticity, interestingly, and that's what the fun of it is. And the outcome then immediately sort of flattens the field and everybody's involved and engaged. And so each person who plays it out has that amount of authorship and playfulness into it. So everyone feels really gratified at the end of the game because it's been a really socially democratic outcome. Suddenly, everybody is the author of the meal. I mean, that's just an example. Does that talk about it a little bit more? We did that with the pond. The pond has hundreds of people. The pond literally was made up of a set of provisional ingredients that has emerged out of every artist that has come to Mildred's Lane, every project, every corner of the site, and the students kept making iterations of that design until we got it to a place. And you collaborate with an algorithm too. You can change it and shift it. So each set of students, every time, we've been doing Pond House, Springhouse Pond since 2008. But I was playing around with that design since we got the place and wrongly dug a hole and the water seeped through it and just completely leaked out. It's sort of holding water now, but then I decided, well, this is crazy. I mean, I could just predetermine this whole site. But what is that? That's such a lonely task. It's like, rather share this landscape with everybody, all of my friends, and let's come to it democratically and see what we create. Algorithms are a really great tool for that. Yes?
Could you talk about Mildred Slain's sort of efforts to raise awareness against hydrofracking?
Oh yeah, that's a huge subject. I mean, I could talk for another hour on that. Everybody knows what hydraulic gas fracturing is right there, right? It's in our lexicon. Is that still going? Yeah. It's an ugly source, it's just about resistance. It's resistance to, which is a really hard thing in our societies today, not only in America, but all over the world. It's like Mildred Slain is just that one little effort of resistance to all of this homogenized, just add water, we're gonna think for you kind of big daddy thing. The oil and gas companies have very slowly and insidiously moved in to all parts of the world for the last 40 or 50 years. They've been doing this for a long time. It's just suddenly we woke up and smelled the coffee, when it moved into our backyard. And I'm ashamed of that. I'm ashamed that I wasn't so environmentally aware of those things until like 2009 or I can't even remember when it was, when some guy walked onto my land and tried to, get me to sign a paper to sell my land rights over to the frackers so they could set up some ponds there. And I mean, it's been a nightmare. It's been a big battle. And they have moved into several, especially upstate New York, around the Finger Lakes. They've moved in northeastern, all of Pennsylvania. Governor Corbett sold his soul to the devil. All of Pennsylvania is now a toxic site, just like Texas, just like Arizona, just like Utah, just like Oklahoma. They've already done it all over the places where people don't exist, but now they're running out of tactics and they're moving into places that are regarding your watershed. Up there where our water is, that Delaware River, that's your watershed. That's the watershed to Chesapeake Bay, to Washington, D.C., the whole upper eastern seaboard. And they've been fracking, and it's too late. It's eventually going to seep into the underground rivers. There's this notion of like, oh my God, water has borders, and don't worry, we're doing it over here. It's not going to touch you. But that is an underground aquifer that is literally going to be contaminated at some point. And I'm sure you've seen Gaslands 1 and 2, and if you haven't, please just download it off the internet. I think you can YouTube it now. It's really important filmmaking by Josh Fox, and he lives just 5 miles north of us. So, what else do you want me to say about it? Would you like to say something about it? I can't talk enough about this subject. But we have banned it from our township. We fought, our collective community got together and we fought it up and down that little bit of Delaware River. But it's hard, and it's ripped our community apart. And I'm doing this town project now called Bridging Narrows, which is collaborations with all of my artist friends to do projects in that upper Delaware region. I've tried to write grants for it. I haven't been successful yet, but I'm going to persist. Persistence overcomes most obstacles. I learned that a long time ago. It's like persisting to try to get some funding to bring the community back together, because it's literally ripped apart. And there's this kind of healing that has to be done. I mean, the town meetings are violent rampages against, people against each other. And it's trying to sort of create an environment where we can sort of work through these problems together. Yeah.
Hello, and thank you for a lovely talk. One of the threads that I've seen for the conference has been labor and work, and especially how to support artists and how to fund artists working in this vein. And I was wondering if you could talk about the economy of Mildred Slain and maybe what economic models you choose, or maybe what economic models you aspire to with that project.
Well, we all know it's a problem. Sorry, it's moving in and out of that light. Sorry. You should come up here. I'm going to get a pillow. Yeah, it's a problem. There's nothing you can do about it. The thing at Mildred Slain is that Mark and I both support it out of pocket, and it's just as project artists, I lecture, I do anything I can to, try to avoid the nonprofit racket. It's been a real battle. It was a real decision early on for both of us. And Mark, jump in if you can join me on this subject about what to do about Mildred Slain and how to support it. And honestly, there are some times of year where I am so broke I can't buy groceries. It's just so ridiculous, but I'm devoted to it. It just can't. It's going to get to a place where it can self-subsist. But it's a creative economy. We try to figure out forms of exchange that aren't monetary because we can't pay artists to be there, although we try to pay for their travel and their gas. But what we do is we give them gifts, and we create fabulous gourmet meals 3 times a day for them. We give them an environment to feel discursive and creative in. It's we try to create a place that people want to be, participate in, so that we're all pulling our efforts. The projects, the artists, we maintain that any project that is done at Mildred Slain is owned by the artist, so everybody's pulling money in. It's like, if Robert Williams or Amy Yost chooses to sell their folly to MoMA, then we say that's their right. They can lift that up at that expense, not ours, and take it away. And hopefully they'll think of Mildred's Lane in their will, you know, or something. All of you think of Mildred's Lane in your will, by the way. Put that down right now. But it's very loose and organic. You know, my son loves to call us a bunch of hippies, but it's not like that. It's really not. It's like we're trying to creatively solve these problems together, and honestly, there are so many ways to piece it together, but you're always going to struggle with it. It's just, we're struggling with it. But it's worth it. Every bit. Yeah. Oh, wait. And one over there.
To time.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. And I just want to briefly give an overarching reflection that I had, and the word that just kept popping into my mind is it's such a special, total work. The impression I got of what you were describing is how unique something like this is. And I would love to hear your thoughts on how the space is, how that difference, I guess I want to hear from people who have been there and who have experienced it. Not to put anybody on the spot, but how do you bring some of those moments and some of that specialness into your own life, into your own practice? Because something like Mildred's Slain is not everywhere, right? And it's not something that happens all the time. But I don't know if anyone wants to talk about it, or I'm just putting it out there.
I would love it if some of my friends would stand up and just give a testimonial, because I feel a little awkward about that. Here's one right here. And let's not forget your question over there either. There is a down here that has something to say.
I have one here, and then I'll come over to you for a second.
I've been to Mildred's Lane several times, Colleen Sheehy from Plains Art Museum, and I think it is something that you take away with you, a way of living, thinking about your work, thinking about how you relate to people, fostering creativity in your home, in your workplace, and that kind of radical hospitality that Mark and Morgan, you're in their home, you take books off their bookshelf in their library, and it's this incredible openness, as well as a vision of, it's a very utopian vision of a collaborative group that people coming together. Not everyone knows each other. People come from across the country, they're different ages, their children running around, and just a heightened experience of life, of environment, of nature, and it does have an impact. So thank you, Morgan and Mark, and for all you're doing, because it's a struggle. I know, the financial part of it, but it's such a valuable vision, and I hope that we can all help them sustain it, and also to spread the utopian ideas that it represents.
Thank you. I just want to say, I know it looks fancy, but it's literally built by artists. Everything there is handmade, hand-built, adaptive reuse everywhere. I just want to drive that home. But it's a special environment. I'm proud to be there.
I worked, and I kind of grew up there as an artist. Right after Micah, I learned more
As Athena Kokoronus introduced
there than I did at any art school that I had to pay a lot of money for. I worked really hard, and I think that people come and they don't realize how much work there is, like day-to-day work and messiness. And I think in messiness, like, we have to remember there's lots of messiness and flooding, sometimes like toilets and leakage coming into the scrambled eggs while Natalie German-Janko's talking. There's just like, there are big catastrophes sometimes.
some fun stories.
But it's like there's lots of
you learn a lot through all of that messiness. And I have a secret photo archive of very messy moments. If you ever want to come,
I want that.
I'll give them to you.
That's a whole presentation.
It could be.
I love that.
As I come over to youth, I'll just say that I agree about how much there is to learn and in the work and the labor and in the messiness, and how that really creates a lot of potential. Just a lot of potential that comes from that.
While we're talking about messiness, I just want to assure people that I'm a messy person, but I've been to Mildred Slain a lot and love it. And yes, it's affected my life, but not as much as I wish. But it's what's extraordinary, and I don't know. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but it really is. Morgan does a remarkable job of creating a context and taking and making concepts out of, you've heard them, comportment, work styles, things that we all do, but turning them into kind of a theoretical, practical, pedagogical, playful environment. And I'm a writer, and she asked me to come down once, and I gave a talk that I was just embarrassed by. I was just kind of looking at my notebook and kind of notes I had made about Man Ray and this.
One of my most favorite talks ever.
It was just about Man Ray was part of an artist colony in New Jersey, which nobody knows about. So, and then and she was so enthusiastic about it, and I wrote it all up into a whole huge paper because of it. But to me, it was just a little workbook. But she sees things. But I think there's also a self-selection. There's a respect. That is basically it's respect for each other, for the land, for nature, for your wonderful napkins. Sleeping there is just fantastic. You get these cozy little places that are just wonderful. And I can't not say something about Salty, who was their turtle who belonged to Gray Rabbit, who was just my love. I met Salty when he was all by himself, before, what was it, Fran and Sam showed up. And Salty was this turtle that you would go into the kitchen and he'd be in his little aquarium, but he'd be hanging out, right? He was like watching.
Totally a social being.
Completely social. And so I would constantly go there, and I ended up making my 1-minute film for Jason Simon's film series on Salty. So anyway, it's a remarkable place.
Thank you, Thurza. Yeah, there's a lot of 1-minute films, and Jason Simon's 1-minute film festival that's traveling around the country right now. I mean, really, Mildred Slain generated a lot of stuff from there, from all the fellows and artists that was there.
Okay, we have one more testimonial and then 2 quick questions.
Okay.
So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, sorry about my voice. Someone else had mentioned about the place feeling special, and the one thing that I thought about, both being there as a fellow and then as an artist in residence, was just how special it was to have the time to experiment with different ways of living and different ways of collective living and personal living. And I think that's one of the things that I took away from, for sure, from being at Mildred Slain, was that special space to completely and totally remove yourself from any idea of how you thought life normally lived for people, and how you could find new ways to live for yourself and with other people.
Lisa Sikorsky, she was a fellow in Retail 21st Century, 2008?
I was wondering, given what you were saying before about financial limitations, and the tuition, it's like $1,000 a week, right? So I was wondering if you see that price as unavoidably high, and if it affects diversity and accessibility.
Unfortunately, it sounds unaffordably high, but when you think about it and put it in context and what you're getting, it's like you're coming into a home where there are dozens of international creative practitioners there speaking and exchanging ideas at any given moment, in any given day or week. There are 3 gourmet meals that everybody's inventing on the spot. You know, I mean, beyond like 5-star hotel kind of stuff sometimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes not. But I would say my fancy grits would match any breakfast at any hotel. You know, also, you're in the most luxurious bed with high thread count cotton sheets, you know, selected by textile maniac of myself, and we're seeking comfort. You're getting a hot water bottle when you go to bed. You know, what we do in the care and the community and how people come to it, it's like that $1,000, I just was crunching the numbers recently. There's no way that touches the cost that goes into what we do. And it's embarrassing. I honestly wish I grew up as a goddamn radical socialist in the turbulent 60s, you know. I'm not, you know, the song I'm going to play as you go out is I don't give a damn about a greenback a dollar. Spend it fast as I can on a Wayland song and a good guitar. Only things that I understand. Woody Guthrie. But you know, it's hard. We have to put $1 on it. And you know, there was one institution that was like balked because we were at 2,800 last year. This year we're at 33,000. You know, for a session, because usually it's 1,000 a week. But it's basically $143 a day for 3 gourmet meals. The international artist community of social practitioners, you know, exchanging ideas. You know, you're getting the freshest, most wonderful bed and in a natural environment with everything. And we have animal stories to boot. By the fire, bear, raccoon, my pet porcupine, my pet crow, you know, fox, everything, fresh garden salads. I don't know how else to do it. I've tried to pare it down as cheaply as I possibly can. But it's just not possible. We still live in this world about $1. And I have to pay, you know, the town spaces. I have to pay my staff something because they're, you know, I have to, and everybody's trying to contribute as much as they can. But I don't believe in martyrdom. That's one of the #1 rules of my collaboration documents is there's no martyrs allowed. I'm not a martyr here. I want it to work somehow. So I'm just still trying to sort that out. If I could do it for free, I would. But it's just not possible. We have to collectively try to slowly get there. Does that answer the question? Put it into perspective. I mean, you know, Pablo Helguera, what do you get paid for your lectures? Are you still here? I mean, we can't pay his fee. But we'll treat him delightfully as we can.
Okay, here's the final question of the night.
Hi, Jay Morgan. I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate the breadth of the vision and the generosity of spirit that it takes to manage something.
It's not just me, it's everybody else who's doing it.
Yeah, and you did make a mention earlier that you have supporters and critics in the room, and I guess I want to try to get a sense of how you would like a critique to form around this practice, because you do have a special burden with this kind of work, which is that since it must be experienced directly to be fully comprehended, but yet you must still rely upon the conventions of representation to share the story. So since we can't all go there today, what's the kind of critique that you want to have around this work that would be meaningful for you? How do we engage with it on a level that you feel like is a dialogue that's reflective of the time and the energy that you've put into it?
Well, I think quite simply, it's like 20th century critique does not apply here. Okay, Frankfurt School, everything that we learned in the 20th century has kind of been flushed out. And there are several theorists and philosophers who are writing about this today, right now. What's really interesting about Mildred Slain critically is that you're applying your critical faculties in the moment, in the everyday, in the banal. It's now that we have that toolbox removed and studied out to a destructive state, you know, we now have that critical faculty. You know, when you walk into a project space in Narrowsburg, New York, you don't lose your critical faculties like you did in the 20th century, where you walk over a threshold in a retail space and suddenly, you know, your Freudian, you know, marketing, consumerism goes into blink. You know, you're a Pavlov's dog. You're suddenly like, desire, I want it, I want it, I want it. You know, we're beyond that now. So it's about being critically engaged. You got that toolbox. We don't need to flush that out anymore. I mean, I hope. I think that still in our institutions, in our pedagogical institutions particularly, it's like we need to move on from that and to really start rebuilding, reconstructing critical engagement in a more community discursive environment. And I think that's the way we apply those tools at Mildred Slain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's still a space for judgment.
Well, judgment is another thing.
Yeah.
That's not criticality. Judgment is judgment. Judgment is an entirely another subject. And we can go there, but I don't think it's really appropriate for this conversation. I mean...
Yeah, no, I mean, I really am more concerned about, like, how are we supposed to engage with it ourselves and critique it from a distance? Like,
well, you can critique it from a distance as you like, but I think that, you know, I go back to Dewey on this as experiencing as knowing. The experience is knowledge. You know, you can be an armchair theorist, but we're human beings. We live on this wild, bewildering planet that's killing itself. We got to do something. And if we can't critically apply our toolboxes and be engaged with one another in a constructive manner, we are doomed. We all realize that at this state. I mean...
Nancy was going to ask a question. I think she's afraid to break the rules.
No. We're okay, so we'll keep it moving.
Hi. I think you have a beautiful utopian community there. I guess.
Well, it's not utopia, but I'm interested in those studies. But
right.
It's not utopia. We've got a hellish situation on our hands there. Please, let me just make that perfectly clear. I am taking on that subject of utopian studies, and I have been a spokesperson at the International Utopian Studies conferences. But that's not, you know, what we're trying to build. That's just kind of a sidebar effect of the conversation. So let me make that clear.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, that there is a lot of work and effort and that it's not a utopia, it's more of a functioning community that has its ups and downs and difficulties and struggles, financial as well, personal. I guess my question that I was, you know, talking with Edgar about a little bit, and I totally agree, I understand Dewey and I think he's very important in terms of experience. But then I also think about equity and access. And, you know, situations like this are always exclusionary because of the scale. So how is there access, or how do you deal with other people who struggle with a lack of resources, or how do you create a model that can work with communities that maybe struggle to obtain resources?
Okay, I'm not trying to solve the problems of the world here, but what's really interesting is that if you're interested in trying to do that, you know, it's worth a visit. If you really want to be there, it's not an exclusionary system. If you really want to come and visit, we help make that, it's really quite simple, you know? You could hitchhike there and come to a social Saturday. It's just a little bit harder.
Oh,
you're not going to turn on the TV and
it's distance. There's, you know, I think about the separatists, right? So, and in some ways that there is that distance that allows for this kind of incubation. So it has its place. It's very important for some work, but there's also these questions arise. They arise because I'm not from this part of. I'm from Los Angeles, so I have a different context.
But the wonderful thing is that there are these outcroppings of so many like-minded people who are doing these things. Fritz Haig just started his own school in Los Angeles.
I know well.
It's really a friend of Mildred Slain, you know, has done a lot of work there and is, you know, creating his own practice, pedagogical practice there. Several other people sort of who have come here and come there and have been affected are creating their own systems that sort of create these small town-like communities that sort of echo out. It's like change starts at home. That is what is really profound, that people figure out. That starts at home. So you could start at your home. I mean, this is not about exclusionary systems overcoated with this, these ideas. This is like, it's actually, all periods pressing in at once or suddenly activated. But what's really central is that it's domesticity at the center of the conversation suddenly. And that's a powerful feminist point.
Bell Hooks talks about the same thing.
Yes, love Bell Hooks.
Sure, Bonnie.
Hi. I just wanted to, I think maybe what this question was about is just probing a little further, and it's looking at community, not just artist communities, but the communities around where you're actually physically situated, where there might be people who are not in the arts community, and how does Mildred Slain work with those communities, or does Mildred Slain address those communities?
Well, I think I described that in part of the portion of the lecture, and if I wasn't clear about that, please, ask. The Mildred complexity has been activated just for that. We're in the town. We're doing projects in the town. We're in the town every day. We're in the community. We're involved with the arts community there, not only the town system, the town meeting. We're part of our local active groups, the Upper Delaware, Catskill Riverkeeper, all of these organizations. We're a part of that whole community. We're involved there very deeply. We're even regenerated the 4th of July parade, and we do a float in the 4th of July parade, and we've gotten the whole town to commit to doing floats next year, because before it was just a bunch of firemen who were just getting all their fire trucks from all the counties around, and they would just go around the block with their sirens going, and we're just like, I couldn't stand it anymore. So we started, everybody, creating floats for the town that could be in between the fire trucks with their sirens. So, it's little things like that. Go ahead. Okay. You were going to say something?
All I was going to say is that this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for all of the questions and the thoughtfulness. And just a big round of applause for Morgan.
Thank you. Thank you. And if there are more questions, I have a car in the parking lot, and I'm having a tailgate party for a few minutes out there as I pack up.